begin with a lovely quote. Trust takes years to build, seconds to break, and forever to repair. Yes, it's extremely and very, very true. Based on this, we have this beautiful chapter, A Question of Trust by Victor Canning, your 4th chapter in Footprints Without Feet. So let's see what this chapter has in store for us, and I'm telling you, you're going to love this chapter. So yes, please stay glued. Gregorio Lopez Vifuentes was one of the most important chroniclers of the Mexican Revolution and its effects. What do you mean by chroniclers? Now, chroniclers are those people who write the accounts of, important or historical events. So he was one amongst them because he made those accounts of the Mexican Revolution and its effects. Victor Canning was a famous English writer of novels and thrillers. His thrillers are famous for their romance, mystery, and unexpected and highly thrilling endings. This is one of them. In 1965, he began a series of 4 books that featured a private detective named Rex Carver. So this story that you are seeing, you're going to, hear or rather listen right now, is one of those thrillers. It's really fun, so please stay glued. A Question of Trust. Now, just as the title suggests, it's a matter of trust. So there is a probability and a possibility of someone cheating. So A Question of Trust is based on the robbery committed in a house at Shotover Grange. Now, Shotover Grange is basically a country house with farm buildings attached. So it was that type of a place where this robbery was committed. 2 professional thieves and burglars come face to face while on the same mission of robbing a safe in the house. Now, do we see thieves and burglars? Actually, don't you think they both do the same thing? Their work profile is the same, but there is a little difference. Thieves, they do steal without, being unnoticed. They are not noticed. Whereas a burglar also does the same thing, but a burglar generally enters into a structure, into a home. He breaks into a building, or a home. There's a structure. He enters it to commit a crime. So that's the difference between thieves and burglars. So those who break into anyone's house, they are called burglars. Yeah. So 2 professional thieves and burglars come face to face while on the same mission. Their mission is the same, okay, of robbing a safe in the house. Both of them made elaborate preparations to make the theft a complete success. Now, it was a very royal robbery, so they had to do a lot of planning. So yes, they did do elaborate preparations. Horace Danby robbed a safe every year only to buy rare and expensive books. Now, this is a very rare thing to come across. Now, why would he steal? Horace Danby was a burglar. Now, he robbed a safe every year. Every year, he would do one robbery. He would break into a house and rob a safe. But for what? Only to buy rare and expensive books. He was a voracious reader. He used to read a lot, but he did not have the money to buy those books. So, because of that, he would commit the robbery and then he would go and buy those books which he wanted to read and which he could not afford. He was caught red-handed by a lady in red. You will know more ahead. The young lady in red was also a thief, but she presented herself as the lady of the house. Horace, in confusion, requested her to go away. She threatened to call the police. At last, a compromise was reached. The cost of Horace's freedom was settled. He was to open the safe and hand over the jewels to her. Horace thought that he was opening the safe for the lady of the house. After 2 days, Horace was arrested on the basis of those fingerprints left on the safe. A grey-haired 60-year-old lady, the wife of the owner of the house, stated that Horace's story was nonsense. I guess you have got the chapter, but still I want you to enjoy it, every bit of it, every second of it. So yes, let's move on. Everyone thought, now as I'm reading, I want you people to visualize it. And trust me, you're going to enjoy every second of it. Everyone thought that Horace Danby was a good, honest citizen. He was about 50 years old and unmarried, and he lived with a housekeeper who worried over his health. In fact, he was usually very well and happy except for the attacks of hay fever in summer. What's hay fever? It is a disorder affecting the nose and throat, caused by allergy to pollen or dust. So whenever you have this allergy to pollen or dust, you tend to develop, you get hay fever. So he would get that particularly in summer. And his housekeeper used to be worried about his health, right? Now he was considered a good and an honest citizen. He made locks and was successful enough at his business to have 2 helpers. He used to make locks, right? And he was so successful that he had appointed 2 helpers in his work. Yes, Horace Danby was good and respectable, but not completely honest. Now, he used to work. He was a good citizen, very respectable, but yes, he was not completely honest. 15 years ago, Horace had served his first and only sentence in a prison library. See, it is a good thing. Prisoners, instead of just sitting idle, they are left in a library. So he was there, and he was a book lover. He loved to read. So 15 years ago, he had served his first and only sentence in a prison library. He loved rare, expensive books. So he robbed a safe every year. Each year he planned carefully just what he would do, stole enough to last for 12 months, and secretly bought the books he loved through an agent. Now, he used to plan the whole thing. He used to plan that, okay, this is the safe I'm going to rob. Then he would plan it all the year. Quite a lot of time. Then he would finally, make sure that he robs enough that can help him survive for 12 months. So he doesn't have to bother. He was not a greedy one. He wouldn't just keep robbing and robbing. No, he had a motive behind it. And what was the motive? He wanted to buy those books which he could not afford. So he used to steal, and he would steal enough to, help him last for 12 months. So every year he would, break into one house and steal a safe. And then after getting that, he would sell whatever jewels he bought, and very secretly he would get those books. How? Through an agent. Now, walking in the bright July sunshine, he felt sure that this year's robbery was going to be as successful as all the others. Year after year, he had been robbing that one safe, any one safe rather. So he was very confident that, okay, this year also that one safe which I'm going to rob, I'm sure I'm going to be successful just like the previous years I have been. For 2 weeks, he had been studying the house at Shotover Grange. Now, it is like that. People actually, literally study that when is this person going, when is this person coming, servant is there, not there, going what time, coming what time. All those things, they take note of it, and only then they break into the house. So, what is Grange? A country house with farm buildings attached, like I already mentioned. So, he had been studying that house. He had been checking, who's coming, who's going, what is happening. Looking at its rooms, its electric wiring, its paths and its garden. He had to see everywhere. So, in case he's caught, how to escape, how to break in, everything, the electric wiring. This afternoon, the 2 servants who remained in the Grange while the family was in London, the family was not there, there were only 2 servants in that house, had gone to the movies. Now, both the servants had gone for a movie and the family was in London, so there was nobody at home. Horace saw them go and he felt happy in spite of a little tickle of hay fever in his nose. Now, he was happy, oh, finally they've left. But at the same time, he wasn't fully well. He had this little hay fever in his nose. That allergy thing was irritating him. He came out from behind the garden wall. his tools carefully packed in a bag on his back. All the tools he had carried to break the wire, to break open the door, to break open the safe. So he needed the different instruments, right? So he carried them, in a bag, and it was on his back. There were about 15,000 pounds worth of jewels in the Grange safe. Now, there were jewels worth 15,000 pounds. If he sold them one by one, he expected to get at least 5,000, enough to make him happy for another year. Now, obviously, even they were worth 15,000, but he wouldn't get them all, right? So, if he went to sell them one by one, he calculated roughly that he would get at least 5,000 pounds, and that would help him survive the whole year. There were 3 very interesting books coming up for sale in the autumn. Now, he wanted those books. So he says, oh, now if I sell this, I will be able to buy those 3 interesting books which were upcoming. Now he would get the money, he wanted to buy them. So if he is successful at breaking the safe, selling the jewelry and getting the money, he would be able to buy the books. He had seen the housekeeper hang the key to the kitchen door on a hook outside. Now, they used to lock the kitchen door, but he left the key there on the hook outside. He put on a pair of gloves, took the key and opened the door. He was always careful not to leave any fingerprints. He was very careful because he was experienced. Every year he would do it. So he made sure that he does not leave any fingerprints. A small dog was lying in the kitchen. It stirred, it moved, it made a noise and moved its tail in a friendly way. All right, Sherry, Horace said as he passed. Now he knew the dog's name as well, and just check this. All you had to do to keep dogs quiet was to call them by their right names and show them love. See, so smart. Now, thieves, they have the knack of everything. So he knew if I tell him, okay, he shows him love and he calls him by his name, the dog will not bark unnecessarily. So he says, all you have to do is just call them by their name and show them a little love and they are okay. And that's how it was. Sherry did not bark. The safe was in the drawing room behind a rather poor painting. Now, that's how generally people do. They don't reveal it in the open, so they have a hiding place. Horace wondered for a moment whether he should collect pictures instead of books. So when he looked at the painting, he said, do you think I should start collecting paintings now instead of books? Will that be a good idea? But they took up too much room as in too much space. So paintings are pretty huge and of different sizes. So obviously you need that much place to keep them. In a small house, books were better. Then he told himself, no, the house that I live in, such a small house, I can keep enough books, not paintings. There was a great bowl of flowers on the table. On the table, there was a nice big bowl with a lot of fresh flowers. And Horace felt his nose tickle. Why? You remember, because of the pollen, so when there is a lot of pollen, that allergy gets instigated. Even it starts, gets aggravated. So his nose started to tickle. He gave a little sneeze and then put down his bag. He sneezed and he put his bag down, which was on his back. He carefully arranged his tools. He had 4 hours before the servants returned. He said, now they've gone for a movie. It will take them 4 hours to come back. So I have that much time to break the safe open. The safe was not going to be hard to open. After all, he had lived with locks and safes all his life. You remember, he used to make locks. He also had 2 helpers. So he knew very well how these locks break open, and he knew about the safes as well. The burglar alarm was poorly built. Generally, what happens when someone, they keep these burglar alarms. So when someone tries to break, your safe or break into the house, that alarm starts ringing. But in this case, it was very poorly done. He went into the hall to cut its wire. He just cut off the wire. So obviously, it will not work. He came back and sneezed loudly as the smell of the flowers came to him again. Now that smell was irritating him. Again it came and he started to sneeze loudly. How foolish people are when they own valuable things. Now they own so many beautiful things, so many valuable things. Why all this? Horace thought a magazine article had described this house, giving a plan of all the rooms and a picture of this room. Now he knew this room still very well because a magazine had put this picture. They had actually described this house. They had published this article, a magazine article, and they had described this entire house. Particularly they had the picture of this room. The writer had even mentioned that the painting hid a safe. Well, that's pretty strange. I don't know why would anyone do that. It is like putting your axe on your own foot. It's like inviting trouble. So the writer had even mentioned that behind the painting there was a safe. But Horace found that the flowers were hindering him in his work. Now those flowers were irritating him. It was like an obstacle. It was disturbing him. He buried his face in his handkerchief. He just covered his face with the handkerchief. Then he heard a voice say from the doorway, "What is it? A cold or hay fever?" Now imagine, just remember, he was alone. I mean, obviously because he had come to rob. There was nobody else expected to be around in that house. And suddenly he hears a voice asking him, "What is it? A cold or hay fever?" Before he could think, before he could even realize that someone is there where I'm supposed to be alone, Horace said hay fever and found himself sneezing again. And again he started sneezing. The voice went on, "You can cure it with a special treatment, if you find out just what plant gives you the disease." Now that voice was telling him, he still hasn't seen who that person is. But the person is saying, "Don't worry. You know what? This thing can be cured. But you have to know from which plant you are getting this problem. I think you'd better see a doctor if you are serious about your work." Now, you're serious about your work means what? Robbing? Stealing? Yes? So, if you are really serious about this, you should be showing a doctor because this thing should not be bothering you while you are at work, while you are robbing. I mean, it was disturbing him, right? It was a quiet, kindly voice, but one with firmness in it. It was a very calm voice, but it was very firm. A woman was standing in the doorway and Sherry was rubbing against her. Now, there was a woman standing there in the doorway, right near the door, and Sherry, the dog, was rubbing against her. She was young, quite pretty, and was dressed in red. She walked to the fireplace and straightened the ornaments there. All the things that were there, the decorative pieces, she went there and she straightened them, she put them together. "Down, Sherry," she said. "Anyone would think I'd been away for a month." She says, "Now see, just quietly go with the flow, okay?" So she says, "Down, Sherry," and she says, "Maybe everyone would think that I'm not going to be here back for a month." She smiled at Horace and went on. "However, I came back just in time, though I didn't expect to meet a burglar." She said, "Look, I was supposed to be away for a month, but I'm glad I am back in time, though I did not expect to meet a burglar in my house. I did not definitely think of it, but I have come back at the right time." Horace had some hope because she seemed to be amused at meeting him. He somewhere felt that, he had some hope that he can convince this female not to scream because somewhere he could feel, he could read her mind that she was okay meeting him. He might avoid trouble if he treated her the right way. He was pretty experienced. He says, "Now if I treat her in the right manner, I will have not much trouble to face." He replied, "I didn't expect to meet one of the family." He says, "Even I did not expect to meet one of the family members. I thought there was nobody here." She nodded. "I see. What an inconvenience it is for you to meet me. What are you going to do?" She says, "Now, I understand. It's pretty inconvenient now that I am here. I have come and I have disturbed what you were doing. So now what are you going to do?" Horace said, "My first thought was to run." He says, "Obviously, first I thought I should run away." "Of course, you could do that, but I would telephone the police and tell them about you. They'd get you at once." She says, fine, you definitely can do that. But I am going to call the police and tell them all about you. And of course, they would get you at once. They'll catch you. Horace said, I would, of course, cut the telephone wires first and then. He says, well, I think I would have cut off the telephone wires. How would you call? He hesitated, a smile on his face. I would make sure that you could do nothing for some time. A few hours would be enough. He says, of course, I would have definitely made sure that you will not be able to do anything for a few hours. And I'll be done. I'll be sorted. I will escape. She looked at him seriously. You'd hurt me? Are you going to hurt me? Are you going to hit me or, cover my mouth or tie me up? Are you going to hurt me? Horace paused and then said, I think I was trying to frighten you when I said that. He says, actually, when I said all this, my plan was to frighten you so that you're afraid of it and you don't do anything. You didn't frighten me. She is very firm. She says, you didn't frighten me. Not at all. I haven't got frightened by whatever you spoke. Horace suggested it would be nice if you would forget you ever saw me. Let me go. He says, look, it'll be really nice of you and it'll be good for you if you just forget what you saw. You did not see me. That's it. Just let me go. I've done nothing yet. The voice was suddenly sharp. Now she becomes way more sharper. Why should I? You were going to rob me. If I let you go, you'll only rob someone else. Society must be protected from men like you. She says, why do I let you go? For what? Today, if you have come to rob me, okay, I might let you go. But tomorrow you will go and rob someone else. So anyways, the whole society is in trouble. So men like you should be arrested. Horace smiled. I am not a man who threatens society. I steal only from those who have a lot of money. I steal for a very good reason. He says, look, I do not threaten the society. The society is not in trouble because of me. If I am robbing, first and foremost, I don't rob anyone and everyone. I only rob those people who do have a lot of money. And moreover, stealing for a reason, for a good reason. I don't steal it for fun. I steal it for a good reason. And I hate the thought of prison. We are all aware why he used to steal, remember? She laughed and he begged, thinking that he had persuaded her. Look, I have no right to ask you for anything, but I am desperate. Let me go and I promise never to do this kind of thing again, and I really mean it. Now he is seeing that he has got into trouble. He is seeing he has to save himself. He is seeing that he has to persuade this female to let him go. He wants to make a narrow escape. So he promises her, he tries to convince her that, look, I am not going to do this thing ever again, and I literally mean it. So just let me go for now. I will never do this again. I will not repeat this mistake. She was silent, watching him closely. Then she said, you are really afraid of going to prison, aren't you? Now, the way he was literally begging her, to let him go, so she could make out from that. Even she was a very smart female. So she said, you're really, scared of going to the prison, aren't you? She came over to him, shaking her head. She was doing that. I have always liked the wrong kind of people. She picked up a silver box from the table and took a cigarette from it. Horace, eager to please her. Now, he was trying to, be really polite and be so good to her, and seeing that she might help him, took off his gloves and gave her his cigarette lighter. Now, he was trying everything he could at that point of time because he was cornered, right? He had no way to escape. So, everything he was trying, he could probably do to, convince this female so that she lets him go. So, he takes out his gloves, not realizing what he's doing. He takes off his gloves and he offers her his cigarette lighter. You'll let me go? He held the lighter towards her. Again, he's telling her, look, I'm giving you this. I'm being good to you. Will you please let me go? Yes, but only if you'll do something for me. She says, okay, I'll let you go. Condition, you'll have to do something for me. And what was that? Anything you say. You know, at that point of time when you're in deep trouble like this, you are ready to do anything to attain freedom. Before we left for London, I promised my husband to take my jewels to our bank, but I left them here in the safe. I want to wear them to a party tonight, so I came down to get them. But now she's telling him that, you know, my jewels are inside in the safe. And I actually, before leaving for London, I had promised my husband that I will make sure that I, keep all these jewels safely in the bank. But I did not do it. Now tonight I have to go for a party. So I have come to take one of my pieces, one of those jewels. But Horace smiled. You've forgotten the numbers to open the safe, haven't you? He says, okay, so I understand the problem. You have forgotten the numbers of the safe. Yes, replied the young lady. She says, yes, I have actually forgotten. Just leave it to me and you'll have them within an hour. But I'll have to break your safe. He says, look, leave that to me. I will definitely open the safe and give me an hour, but I will have to break it. I mean, I cannot just open it. I'll have to break your safe. She says, don't worry about that. Go ahead and break it. My husband won't be here for a month and I'll have the safe mended by that time. She says, don't worry. Go ahead, break it. Give me my jewelry from there. And since my husband is away for a month, I have enough time to get it repaired. So even if you break it, I will get it fixed before he comes back. And within an hour, Horace had opened the safe. It took him an hour to open the safe, given her the jewels and gone happily away. He gave her the jewels, he did not rob anything, and he just moved away happily. For 2 days, he kept his promise to the kind young lady. He did not go anywhere else to rob. On the morning of the 3rd day, however, he thought of the books he wanted and he knew he would have to look for another safe. Now on the 3rd morning, suddenly again he got that urge that, oh, how will I buy my books? I need money. So now I have to look for another safe. But he never got the chance to begin his plan. He did not even get the chance to start planning. By noon, a policeman had arrested him for the jewel robbery at Shotover Grange. By afternoon, before he could even start planning, he was arrested because of the robbery at Shotover Grange. How? Can you think? Yes, his fingerprints. His fingerprints, for he had opened the safe without gloves. Now, he was doing it in front of the owner, as per him. He was doing it in front of the owner's wife, the owner. So, he did not put on the gloves because now he was no longer stealing. Were all over the room and no one believed him when he said that the wife of the owner of the house had asked him to open the safe for her. He told them, he said, look, I have not broken, I have not stolen. In fact, the wife of the owner of the house, she asked me to break open the safe for her because she wanted the jewelry from inside. But nobody was ready to buy that story. Nobody. The wife herself, a grey-haired, sharp-tongued woman of 60, said that the story was nonsense. So, who is the owner? The owner is a grey-haired, sharp-tongued woman of 60. And who had asked him for the jewelry? A young lady dressed in red. So, do you put the pieces together? What happened? Yes, if you've got it. Horace is now the assistant librarian in the prison. He often thinks of the charming, clever young lady who was in the same profession as he was and who tricked him. She was also a burglar. She tricked him. She told him that I am the owner. He had not seen the owner. She tricked him. They were both in the same profession, but she turned out to be way smarter. She made him open the safe. His fingerprints were there. She took away the jewelry and made a great escape. The poor fellow was caught. He was behind bars. He gets very angry when anyone talks about honor among thieves. He gets so angry when he thinks of this incident and he says, I trusted that lady. A question of trust, the name of your chapter. So where his trust was broken. That's why he gets very angry when he talks of honor among the thieves. Among the thieves, there's nothing. Everyone just wants to make his way. And isn't that interesting? When we say the robbed that smiles steals something from the thief. The robbed ones, those who have robbed, they smile. They steal something from the thief. She was a thief. She stole it from the thief, right? This is how William Shakespeare puts it so beautifully. I mean, you know, in Hindi we say, no, chor pe more. This is what it was. Nele pe dela. This is something of that type. She turned out to be way smarter, broke his trust. So that's why they say, you know, I started the chapter, the module, the video of this session on a beautiful quote. And I say that once again, trust takes years to build, breaks within a second, and it takes forever to repair. He has that impression now the trust is broken. You think he's going to ever be able to trust anyone else? No. But make sure you keep trusting us, keep watching, and keep learning.